Mechanic plowed through the snow to deliver a toy, not knowing the girl's mom was the new CEO. The wind howled through the quiet suburb, swirling snow across empty streets and stacking it high on rooftops. Christmas Eve had come not gently, but with a full-force blizzard, the kind that muted the world, leaving only the sound of your breath and the crunch of boots through ice. Charlotte Blake stood in her driveway, hands trembling as she turned the ignition for the third time. Click. Nothing. She tried again. Still nothing. The SUV stayed lifeless, only a faint whine in protest. Snow had buried the garage overnight, trapping her car inside a frozen tomb. The driveway was a mountain of white, broken only by the messy shovel lines she had scraped earlier. The battery was near dead. The tires? Ice-locked. "Mama, is it broken?" a small voice asked from the porch. Charlotte turned to see her daughter, Maisie, dressed in her pink Christmas dress under a puffy gray cardigan. Red boots peeked out under the hem, and her blonde curls bounced beneath a knit hat with bare ears. Charlotte tried to smile. "It just needs a little help, sweetheart." Maisie held tight to the drawstring bag they had packed the night before. Candy canes, her stuffed lamb, and a handmade card for the volunteers at the community center, where gifts were being handed out to families in need. They had talked about it all week, how this Christmas they would give, not get, how kindness mattered, especially when times were hard. Charlotte looked at the buried tires and felt her chest tighten. Her arms ached from shoveling. Her gloves were soaked. The streets were empty. Just her little girl, and a car that would not start. She grabbed the shovel again, more from desperation than hope. "Looks like trouble," a voice called out. She turned. A man approached with a snow shovel in one hand, toolbox in the other. His coat was thick, boots heavy with slush, hair dusted with flakes. His face looked weathered, but warm. "Dead battery?" he asked, eyeing the SUV. Charlotte hesitated, then nodded. "It won't start. Battery's weak. Tires are stuck. We're supposed to be somewhere important." He set his tools down and smiled at Maisie. "You look like you've got a date with magic." Maisie giggled and ducked behind Charlotte's coat. "I'm Eli," he said, extending a gloved hand. "Charlotte," she replied. "Well then, Charlotte, let's get this baby moving." Without further talk, he started clearing snow. Each motion was firm and practiced. He carved a path to the street, then dropped to his knees beside the driver's side. "I'll check the battery. Got a jump starter in my truck." Charlotte stood still, watching this stranger work with calm determination. After charging the battery, Eli checked the spark plugs and slipped traction mats behind the tires. Maisie bounced. "Is it fixed?" "Really fixed?" Eli stood. "Let's find out." Charlotte slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine started. She gasped, one hand covering her mouth. Relief washed over her in a way that nearly buckled her knees. She stepped out, eyes glassy. "Thank you. I don't even know how to." Eli held up a hand. "No thanks needed, just don't let her miss Christmas." Charlotte reached for her wallet. "Please, let me pay you." But Eli was already walking away, shovel over one shoulder, toolbox in hand. "I'm just a mechanic," he called back. "Helping people is kind of what we do." And then he vanished into the swirling snow. Charlotte stood in silence, Maisie slipping her mittened hand into hers. "That was like a Christmas story," Maisie whispered. Charlotte nodded, voice low and full. It really was. The morning after Christmas Eve was bright but bitterly cold. Snow blanketed the rooftops and sidewalks, carved through only by early risers. Inside Joe's Auto and Repair, heaters hummed beneath the scent of motor oil and old coffee. Eli Morgan stood under the hood of a '96 Ford pickup, brow furrowed, grease smudging his sleeves. His fingers moved with quiet skill, checking valves and tracing lines like someone who knew them by feel, not sight. He hummed faintly, no tune in particular. Across the shop, Joe, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and chewing a toothpick, leaned against the office doorway. "Eli," he called. "Heads up. Someone from corporate's dropping by today. New CEO. Wants a look around." Eli didn't glance up. "As long as they stay out from under the lift." Joe chuckled. "Try not to scare this one off. I didn't put the rat on the inspection bench last time. That rat had a Santa hat. It was festive." Eli wiped his hands and slid back under the hood. Executives came and went. What mattered was the work, fixing things right. An hour later, the bell above the garage door jingled. Charlotte Blake stepped inside, brushing snow from her sleeves. Her blonde hair was pinned neatly, her expression calm but observant. No one here recognized her yet, not even Joe. Since being appointed CEO of the regional garage chain, she had stayed low profile. She had chosen this location to begin her rounds, not for numbers, but because of something else. Someone. She spotted him across the bay, crouched beside an old Buick, hood up. He was speaking to an elderly man with a cane, explaining the issue without rushing. It was him, the man who had helped her and Maisie the night before. Charlotte's breath caught. Same tousled brown curls, same steady focus. His hands were covered in grease, but moved gently. She stayed near the back wall, watching. Eli lifted the hood higher and pointed at a worn belt. "Not urgent," he said, "but I'd change it before the next freeze. I'll take something off the labor. You're practically on payroll anyway." The older man chuckled and patted him on the back before heading to the front desk. Charlotte smiled. Eli turned, catching her standing there. He hesitated. "You look familiar," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Were you here last month? Subaru?" She shook her head. "No, but I think you helped me yesterday." He studied her face. Her hair was down now, lit gold beneath the fluorescence. Last night, she'd been hidden in a knit hat, her face mostly lost behind snow and shadows. Eli squinted. "Sorry, you just remind me of someone." "Maybe that someone made an impression," Charlotte replied with a small smile. Just then, Joe emerged from the office, wiping his palms on his apron. "Miss Blake, you made it. Glad you braved the storm." Eli turned, startled. "Wait, you're—" Charlotte stepped forward and extended her hand. Her voice was calm. "Charlotte Blake, new CEO. I'm here to observe, that's all." Eli blinked, still stunned. Before he could reply, she added, "Don't change anything for me. I'm here to see what good work looks like." Then she moved past him, heels tapping softly against concrete, the faint scent of cinnamon trailing in her wake. Eli stood still, watching her walk away. He wasn't sure what just shifted, but something had. The late morning sun broke through a thin veil of gray clouds as Charlotte pulled into the parking lot of Joe's Auto and Repair. Snow still hugged the edges of the pavement, slowly melting into slush. She remained behind the wheel of her SUV, fingers drumming the steering wheel, rehearsing what she might say. In the back seat, Maisie hummed to herself, wearing a puffy coat over her favorite pink dress. Her small hands clutched a reindeer plushie, and her breath fogged up the window. Charlotte looked in the rearview mirror. "Ready, sweetheart?" Maisie nodded. "Can I ask the car man if he likes fire trucks?" Charlotte smiled. "You can ask him anything." The truth was, nothing was wrong with the SUV. But this visit wasn't about a strange rattle. It was about the man who had helped dig them out of a snowstorm with nothing but a shovel and quiet kindness. Inside the garage, Eli was under a lifted Jeep, a wrench in hand and a pencil tucked behind his ear. The doorbell jingled, but he didn't look up until he heard a small voice. "Hi, Mr. Carman." He rolled out from under the Jeep and bumped his head on the frame, wincing slightly as he sat up. Maisie stood nearby, blonde curls bouncing under her pink knit hat, eyes wide with recognition. "You," she said brightly. "You're the snow fixer." Eli blinked, then chuckled. "The snow fixer? You helped Mommy when our car was broken, and the snow was super big." He looked up. Charlotte stood at the reception desk, a faint smile on her lips. His cheeks flushed. "Oh, I didn't recognize you yesterday. You had your hat on." Charlotte stepped forward, smoothing a hand over Maisie's curls. "I didn't get to thank you properly." Maisie wanted to say hi again. "Also, the car's been making a little rattle noise." Eli straightened, slipping into work mode. "A rattle? Front or back?" She hesitated, then grinned. "To be honest, I don't hear anything, but it seemed like a good excuse." He gave a soft laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, I can take a look if you've got time." Charlotte nodded, then glanced at Maisie. "Why don't you ask if you can help?" Maisie lit up. "Can I help fix the car?" Eli smiled. "I might need a flashlight holder. That's a very important job." She squealed and rushed to the tool bench. While Eli opened the hood and explained the basics to Maisie, Charlotte leaned casually against the wall, watching. There was something disarmingly natural about him, the way he crouched to her level, handed her tools, explained things patiently. He even let her wear a spare pair of safety goggles, far too big for her head. After a while, Charlotte stepped closer. "Eli, our company's hosting a holiday gift drive at the mall this weekend. Just something small, crafts for kids, hot cocoa, handing out donated toys. I thought maybe you'd want to come. A few of us from the company will be helping out." Eli wiped his hands. "Me? I don't think I'm much of a cocoa and glitter kind of guy." Charlotte raised an eyebrow. "You dug a stranger's driveway in a blizzard. You might be more cocoa and glitter than you think." He hesitated. "It's a nice offer, but I've got a pile of repairs to catch up on." Before she could say anything, Maisie tugged on his sleeve. "Please come," she said, eyes wide. "I want you to see my snowflake painting. I made extra marshmallows." Eli looked down at her, the goggles slipping down her forehead, her pink cheeks glowing, her tiny hands holding the flashlight like it was gold. Then he glanced at Charlotte, who said nothing, just smiled. He let out a breath. "All right," he said. "I'll come by." Maisie threw her arms up with a squeal. "Yay!" And Charlotte, watching the way Eli smiled back at her daughter, felt something stir, something steady, unexpected, and quietly hopeful. The community holiday drive was in full swing at the town center's atrium, a cozy space filled with the scent of cinnamon, pine, and soft chatter. Children darted between tables covered in glitter glue and construction paper, while parents sipped cocoa from paper cups. A tall tree stood in the middle, its base surrounded by wrapped gifts and donated toys. Eli hadn't planned to stay long. He'd come mostly because of Maisie, and because saying no to those big brown eyes had been impossible. But as the afternoon unfolded, he found himself doing more than just standing around. Near the donation table, a boy of about 5 stood alone, clutching a red fire truck with a broken wheel. His lip quivered, disappointment written across his face. Eli noticed, walked over, and crouched beside him. "Hey, buddy," he said. "Truck trouble?" The boy nodded silently. "Let's see what we can do." Eli pulled a small multi-tool from his coat pocket and sat cross-legged right there on the floor. In a few quiet minutes, he had the wheel realigned, reinforced the axle with wire, and tested the roll. Good as new. The boy's eyes lit up. "Thanks," he whispered before running off. Charlotte had seen the whole thing. Standing near the cocoa stand, she sipped her drink and watched Eli tuck the tool back into his coat. No theatrics, no glance around for applause, just an act of quiet kindness. She noticed more than that, too. How he wiped his hands on a cloth before scooping Maisie up when she ran to him with her snowflake painting. How he crouched to talk with the kids at eye level. How he listened, really listened, when they spoke. It had been a long time since Charlotte had trusted anyone easily, especially a man. But something about Eli was different, solid, no flash, no smooth lines, just presence. Later, they sat on a bench near the cocoa stand, cups warm in their hands. "I didn't peg you for the community event type," she said, teasing gently. Eli gave a small shrug. Me either. Maisie had gone off to help a volunteer tape bows onto boxes. They watched her in silence for a moment. She really likes you, Charlotte added. I really like her, he said, then paused. She reminds me of my little sister, Claire, when she was that age. Charlotte turned toward him. You have siblings? Had, he said quietly. She died when I was 19. Car crash. I'm sorry. He nodded. It was a long time ago, but holidays bring it back, you know. I think that's why I don't really make plans. I just work. Charlotte looked down into her cocoa. My ex left when I was 4 months pregnant, she said. Said he wasn't ready to be a dad. I didn't get to choose. I had to be ready. Their eyes met. There was no pity, no judgment, just understanding. A soft, steady silence stretched between them like an open door. I didn't mean to bring the mood down, Charlotte said. Sometimes that's the real stuff, Eli replied. She smiled, small and genuine. They sat like that a while longer, warm drinks in hand, fairy lights flickering around them. Maisie returned eventually, cheeks flushed, glitter on her nose. She plopped down between them. Eli offered her the last marshmallow from his cup. She accepted it like treasure. Charlotte laughed, unguarded for once. It wasn't loud, but it was real. It felt good, like something she'd forgotten she missed. She wasn't sure what this was between her and Eli, if it was anything at all, but it felt like the beginning of something. Still, she kept her tone steady, her smile careful. Her role at the company couldn't be compromised. But her heart, that, quietly, had already started to open. The garage buzzed with more noise than usual that morning, engines revving, clipboards shuffling, conversations snapping between mechanics. Eli leaned against a pickup, wiping his hands on a rag. Joe had told him there would be a system-wide announcement. Big boss is coming, Joe had said with a grin. Try not to look like you just crawled out from under a carburetor. Eli hadn't thought much of it. CEOs were names on memos. What mattered were the people who clocked in, who worked late, who made things run. But when the office door opened and Charlotte walked out, heels crisp against the concrete, a blazer perfectly tailored, blonde hair swept up, Eli's grip loosened on the wrench. She stepped forward, her voice calm and poised. Good morning, I'm Charlotte Blake. I was appointed CEO of Blake Automotive Systems last month. That includes this location. I've been visiting each branch to understand how we work, how we serve. Murmurs rippled around the room. Eli didn't move. He barely breathed. CEO? She spoke of upgrades, better benefits, growth strategies, but her words blurred. Eli just stared. The woman he'd fixed a battery for in a snowstorm, the one who watched him fix a broken fire truck, who sat beside him on a bench drinking cocoa. She hadn't said a word. When the announcement ended, the staff broke into chatter. But Eli turned and walked toward the back lot, head down. Charlotte saw him leave. Her stomach twisted. That evening, she returned for a follow-up. Eli didn't look up. His answers were short. Not rude, but not the man who had crouched in the snow to help her. She stood near his workbench as he sorted bolts with mechanical precision. You're upset, she said softly. He didn't look at her. I just didn't expect to find out like that. I wasn't hiding anything. Weren't you? He asked, still calm but steady. His hand stopped moving. I wanted to be seen for who I am, not for a title. And what was I? He said, finally meeting her eyes. Some story for your next leadership speech? The nice mechanic with the good heart? That's not what this was, she said, pain in her voice. None of it was planned. But you had one, he replied. You walked in knowing who you were. I didn't. He dropped the last bolt into the tray and folded the rag slowly. I thought, maybe, we were just two people finding something real. But maybe I was just a side note. Charlotte stepped forward. It was never about titles, not with you. He didn't answer. Just turned back to the wall of tools and began aligning sockets again, neat and focused. She didn't push. She knew better. Some truths, she'd learned, had to be given room. And if Eli was who she believed he was, he would see why she stayed quiet. She left quietly, her heels fading beneath the hum of the radio and the clink of metal. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. He thought about her laugh, her honesty over Coco, how she knelt to help Maisie glue glitter on a snowflake. He'd told her about his sister. She hadn't looked away. But now doubt sat heavy in his chest. Not anger, exactly. Something deeper, something unnamed. And Charlotte? She sat by the window, snow beginning to fall again beyond the glass. Maisie slept upstairs with her reindeer plushie tucked close. Charlotte's hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her thoughts swirled with everything left unsaid. She whispered into the quiet, barely above breath. "Please, just see me, the real me." It had been nearly a week since Eli had spoken more than a few words to Charlotte. He kept his focus on repairs, diagnostics, and customer requests, determined to keep things professional, detached. But something hung in the air, unfinished, unspoken. One gray afternoon, as Eli adjusted the timing belt on an old sedan, an elderly customer shuffled into the garage. Mr. Conrad was a familiar face, mid-70s, widowed, always wore the same olive-green beanie. His car, a dusty teal station wagon, was a relic from the 82nds, held together more by sentiment than steel. Eli greeted him with a nod. "Afternoon, Mr. Conrad. Same squeaky belt?" "Same car, same problems," the old man chuckled. "But it's the only piece of her I've got left." Eli smiled faintly, wiping his hands. As the repair wrapped up, Mr. Conrad leaned on the counter, his eyes distant. "You know that new lady, Charlotte?" Eli stiffened slightly, his hands pausing. "She helped me a few weeks back. Didn't make a big show of it. I'd listed the wagon online, was going to sell it for scrap. Thought I'd finally let it go." Eli glanced at him, puzzled. "But then she found out my daughter used to sit in the back seat with her Walkman, singing along to old Mariah Carey tapes. It was our Sunday ritual. Charlotte asked me if I'd really be okay losing that piece of her." Eli blinked. "And?" "She wrote a check for $1, Mr. Conrad said, his voice tight with emotion. She said, 'Let's say I bought it, but it stays with you, where it belongs.'" Silence stretched between them. "She didn't want thanks. She just wanted to protect something I loved." Eli stared at the worn rubber mat beneath his boots. Later that day, he stood outside the office, hands stuffed in his coveralls, listening quietly as Charlotte spoke to Joe inside. She hadn't noticed him there. "She thinks you need a new district manager," Joe said, half joking. "Going to poach me?" Charlotte's voice was calm, resolute. "I don't need more managers. I need more people like Eli, people who care about the work, about the people. He doesn't see himself as a leader, but maybe that's exactly why he should be one." Joe chuckled. "He's stubborn, you know." "I know," she said with a hint of sadness. "But he's good, honest, and I'd trust him with this company more than anyone with a fancy title." Eli stepped back before they saw him. Her words echoed long after. That evening, as Joe wiped down the counter and closed out the day's invoices, Eli stood nearby, quieter than usual. Joe glanced up. "You okay, son?" Eli hesitated, then asked, "You think I'm being unfair?" Joe tilted his head. "To her?" Eli nodded. Joe sighed, leaning on the desk. "You've got pride, Eli. That's not a bad thing. But sometimes, pride can make us walk away from things that are real." Eli didn't answer. Joe continued. "Charlotte didn't have to show up in this cold town. She didn't have to spend time talking to customers or shoveling snow from the shop entrance last week when no one else did. She's not just writing checks. She's showing up. That means something." Eli looked away. "She still should have told me." "Maybe, but maybe she was hoping you'd see her, not her title. The older man patted Eli's shoulder. "Don't lose someone good just because your pride took a hit. That woman walked into your life holding nothing back. Think about what that's worth." That night, Eli drove home in silence. The roads were slick with fresh snow, the radio low, playing some classic tune he barely noticed. But his thoughts were anything but quiet. Charlotte had seen more in others than most. She'd listened, she'd acted, not with money or power, but with empathy, with heart. And maybe that was worth more than any truth spoken too soon. The snow had returned with quiet insistence, covering the town once more in a soft, wintry hush. At Morgan's garage, the final day of the year wound down slowly. The phones had gone silent. The tools were cleaned and shelved. Joe had already left, humming Sinatra under his breath as he locked the front door behind him. Eli was wiping grease from his hands when he noticed a brown package on the front desk. No return label, just his name, handwritten in neat cursive. He opened it slowly. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a pristine, professional-grade mechanics tool set, wrenches, gauges, ratchets, all shining like they belonged in a museum rather than a garage. At the top lay a folded ivory envelope. He opened the note inside. "If you still believe in people who brave the snow for others, meet me behind the garage, 7 p.m. tonight." No signature. But he knew exactly who had written it. At 7 sharp, Eli stepped into the softly falling snow, breath fogging the air. Behind the garage, in the wide-open lot, stood a clear-walled tent glowing with warm string lights. Inside, a simple table was set for two with mismatched chairs, a thermos of cocoa, and 2 steaming plates of shepherd's pie. Charlotte stood near the entrance, wrapped in a wool coat. Her golden hair spilled over her shoulders, kissed with snowflakes. When she saw him, she smiled. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," he replied, quieter than usual. Inside the tent, the air was warm. Maisie lay curled in a blanket on a cushion nearby, fast asleep, her tiny hand still resting on her fire truck. Charlotte handed Eli a folded piece of paper. At the top, in bold, "Proposal, Independent Flagship Garage, 50/50 partnership. I want to build something better," she said. "Not just another location. A place where doing the right thing is the foundation. Where people like you aren't just staff, they're the soul." He looked at her, then back down at the contract. "I'm offering you an equal stake," she added. "Not for charity, because you've earned it. Because this place should reflect the kind of man who stays after hours to fix a stranger's radiator, who kneels down to talk to a kid like she's the most important person in the room." Eli stayed quiet, eyes flicking to the paper, then to Maisie. She stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly. "I don't know," he said after a pause. "That's a big step." Charlotte nodded. "It is, and if it's not for you, I'll understand. But I had to ask, not because I'm the CEO, because I'm someone who sees how rare you are. And I'd rather build something real with someone like you than run 50 garages with people who care only about numbers." The tent went quiet, save for the gentle patter of snow against the roof. Eli looked at her, not as a corporate leader, not as the woman who caught him off guard, but as someone who'd shown up, again and again, with honesty in her voice and love in her actions. He set the paper down. "I don't need the stake," he said, voice rough. "I just need to be the guy who's here when you or Maisie need something fixed. Doesn't matter if it's a carburetor or a hard day." Charlotte's eyes shimmered. "That's all I've ever wanted." He reached for her hand. Her fingers were cold, a little shaky, but they tightened gently around his. Outside, distant fireworks began to crackle. The new year had come. But for Eli, sitting there in that quiet glow, with warmth in his chest and a sleeping child beside them, something far more important had just begun. He didn't feel like a man patching up what was broken anymore. He felt like someone finally home. 1 year later, the snow had returned, soft, steady, familiar. But this year, It fell on a brand new sign above the entrance of the garage, Maisie's Miracle Auto. Painted in bold red letters with a tiny hand-drawn fire truck beneath, the sign shimmered with a coat of frost and pride. The grand opening had brought in a surprising number of people, neighbors, loyal clients from Joe's former garage, and curious new faces drawn in by the warmth of the name and the story behind it. Inside, the once-old building had been completely transformed. Tools hung neatly along the walls, fresh paint brightened every surface, and in one corner, a small kid zone was stocked with toy cars, coloring books, and yes, mini wrenches and play toolkits. Charlotte stood at the front desk, greeting visitors with her usual calm poise, her blonde hair tucked into a loose braid. She wore jeans and a navy utility jacket, the same kind Eli had insisted she wear so she didn't look too fancy. She had laughed, then worn it anyway. Eli moved around the garage with his sleeves rolled up, grease on his hands, a smudge on his cheek, and a permanent, quiet smile. He chatted easily with customers, explained repairs without condescension, and offered hot cocoa to kids waiting for their parents' oil change. Maisie, now 5, was the unofficial boss of the place. She zipped around in her pink puffer jacket and sparkly boots, giving mini tours. "That's my daddy," she told a wide-eyed little boy, pointing to Eli. "He can fix anything, even my fire truck when it broke its ladder. And this place is named after me 'cause we believe in miracles." No one could argue with that. By evening, the last car rolled out of the bay. Charlotte turned the open sign to closed and flipped off a few overhead lights. Music played softly from a radio on the shelf. Old jazz, something Walter had loved. Eli washed his hands, dried them, and reached for his coat. As he turned, he found Charlotte waiting for him by the front door, her cheeks pink from the cold, her eyes sparkling in the dim light. Without a word, he took her hand. They stepped outside into the gentle snowfall. The world was quiet again, just like that first night. But this time, their story wasn't beginning in the cold. It had already begun in the warmth. They stood there in front of the garage, admiring the sign, the lights glowing from the windows, and the laughter of Maisie echoing faintly from inside. Eli squeezed Charlotte's hand. "You know," he said, his voice soft, thoughtful, "I used to think my life would always be about gears and gaskets, that I'd fix cars, go home, and do it all again the next day." Charlotte leaned her head gently against his shoulder. "But then, someone showed up with a dead battery, a broken heart, and a kid in a pink dress," he continued with a half-smile. "And I realized something." She looked up at him. He met her gaze. "Sometimes, the real miracle isn't fixing machines. It's being chosen by the ones who need fixing, and letting them fix you right back." Charlotte blinked, her smile breaking gently. And Eli added, "I didn't just find a future here. I found a family." Behind them, Maisie pressed her face to the window, waving frantically. Charlotte laughed, pulled Eli toward the door, and whispered, "Time to go home, Mr. Miracle Mechanic." As they stepped inside together, hand in hand, hearts aligned, the snow kept falling. And outside, beneath the glow of the streetlight, the sign glimmered. Sometimes, the kindest hands are covered in grease and still hold your future. If this story moved you, if Eli's quiet strength, Charlotte's courage, and little Maisie's belief in miracles reminded you that love often arrives in the most unexpected ways, then don't let it end here. Hit that hype button to show your support, and subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more heartwarming tales of hope, kindness, and second chances. Every click helps us bring you stories that lift the soul, and who knows, the next one might just change the way you see the world. Until then, keep believing in the quiet heroes and the miracles hiding in everyday moments.